Welcome to ESPN.com's coverage of the 2015 NBA Draft. I'm Jay Bilas along with Chad Ford, and we're talking about big guys right now in the draft. And if you had to pick between two big guys, which one would you take first? And we're going to start off at the very top of the draft, or at least the top of most draft boards and draft lists. And that's the decision between Jahlil Okafor of Duke and Karl-Anthony Towns of Kentucky. Both freshmen, both had great years, both played in the Final Four. And Chad, if you've got that pick and you have to decide between Okafor and Towns, which way do you lean?
Well, we're talking about the number one pick in the draft because this is the question that Minnesota's asking, the question that the Lakers will be asking. Who's the number one pick in this draft? Because I think it will either be Okafor or it'll be Towns. And interestingly, look, I've been an Okafor guy all year, really through February. My mind was, look, this guy is the most skilled low post player that I've seen since I've covered the draft. He's got 10 moves in the block when most big guys at this stage in their careers are lucky to have one or two. And then he's got 10 counters after that. Soft hands, great footwork. He's been incredibly well schooled in the art of playing in the post, and it's a lost art. There's very few players that really have it anymore. But around February, things began to change for me, and now I'm at the point that really, Jay, I don't actually think it's close. I think Karl-Anthony Towns is the best prospect in the draft. I think he's the best big man in the draft. And I think that for a couple of reasons. One, I think he's a better athlete than Jahlil Okafor, and I think that matters. I think he moves better on the floor, especially the way the NBA plays. Two, I think he's a more versatile offensive player than Jahlil Okafor. Why I would agree that Okafor is better than in the post than Towns is. I think Towns is very good in the post, and one of the things that really impressed me watching him work out is he can really shoot the basketball. I think he can be even a stretch four in the league. I think he has the ability to play the 4 and the 5 in the league. And then when you get to the defensive end, I don't even think it's close. I think that Towns is a much better defender than Okafor is. I think he's more versatile. I think he's a better shot blocker. I think he's a better rebounder. And all of those things together, combined with some concerns that I still have about conditioning and Okafor, I just think he fits the way the NBA plays now better than Okafor does. 10 years ago, it would have been Okafor, but with fewer and fewer teams running really any plays at all in the post anymore, I really think that Towns is the guy.
Yeah, I agree with you about the versatility of Towns. I'm blown away by the areas that you can check off where he's really, really good. So he wins the versatility discussion hands down. It's not close. I tend to lean toward Okafor, and it's just a lean. I mean, you're beyond leaning. You're fully in Towns' camp. But I tend to lean toward Okafor simply because he is ultra dominant in one area where I think he can be a 20-point-a-game scorer in the NBA, and that's his low post game. It's funny that I'm not sure whether the February thing where you jumped off the bandwagon for Okafor and onto Towns had anything to do with his injury, but when he twisted his ankle against North Carolina in that first game in Cameron, he was never the same after that. He was still pretty good, but never the same. And he's the type of player that commands a double team. He's an excellent passer out of that double team, big-time offensive rebounder. His finishing rate and efficiency around the basket in isolation and post-up situations is ridiculously good. But the areas of concern that I have, and you know, sometimes when I'm given areas of concern, it sounds like I need to move over to the Towns camp and join you. He's not a good free throw shooter. He shot 51% while Towns shot over 80, which is surprising given how the ball dives in the basket every other time Okafor shoots it. He is not a shot blocker, and he's not as good of a defensive rebounder. He's the superior offensive rebounder. I'm not as worried about the conditioning thing. This year, he played in 4 or 5 minute stretches and then got a blow. His conditioning has improved since he left college and is concentrated solely on the draft. And I think he's going to be okay in the long run in that department. But this is a tough call. But let me ask you this. Outside of the Towns Okafor discussion, should we start thinking that maybe the big guy at 1 and 2 isn't the lock? That maybe a team should think about D'Angelo Russell of Ohio State and Emmanuel Mudiay there. That if times really have changed and the game really has changed, why aren't we talking about those guys at 1 or 2 versus Towns or Okafor?
Look, I think there's some general managers that agree with you, Jay, and I especially think in D'Angelo Russell's case, there are some teams that have made the argument to me that he should be the number one pick in the draft. You look at the playoffs and who are the dominant players. They were Steph Curry, they were James Harden, they were Chris Paul, they were LeBron James, to the point in the finals that Andrew Bogut, the starting center for the Warriors, wasn't even getting in the game, and Timothy Mozgov also had a lot of blow on the bench because they just went away from big men altogether. And maybe that's the trend in the NBA. But I think you can make a counter argument that one of the reasons that's the trend is there just aren't that many good big guys in the league anymore. And I think Karl-Anthony Towns is going to be a great big guy. And I don't think Tim Duncan would have been sitting on the bench getting blow in the finals. I think he would have been on the court, and I think he would have made a big impact. And so I think it's just about quality and the fact that there's been a dearth of big guys that are really great. I don't think Anthony Davis would have been sitting on the bench either, by the way. I just think it's about the personnel that's there, and I think Towns is worthy of that pick. I think there are questions about Okafor because I think he is a little bit more limited. But you're right. And by the way, we're not even talking about a big guy, Kristaps Porzingis from Latvia, that might be the best player of all these guys in the draft, a 7'2" guy that plays like Kevin Durant and Dirk Nowitzki. Maybe that's the guy that everybody should be jumping on, but I doubt anybody will because he played in Latvia, and I think he's just a riskier pick.